ALTBAYS show brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz. We're live on YouTube. If you're watching us, make sure to subscribe to our channel. That really helps the team. You can also join the platform and throw some dollars there to make sure that we keep doing all these cool things. Thank you so much. Obrigado. All right. We have a second channel called the ALTBAYS Clips. So if you don't have time to watch the whole conversation, you can go there and check some of our clips. They are like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 7-minute clips of the highlights from all our shows. And we are obviously a podcast, so you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, and all those beautiful audio platforms. Please make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. TikTok, the madhouse. I know, right? I have to say that because it's very important. Show is growing. Things are going well. We're bringing cool people to have amazing conversations. So we always take recommendations. We want to know who you want to see us talking to. So feel free to send us some cool names. We have amazing people coming to chat over summer. It's going to be a good time. So stay with us. On my left, hi, Jess.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Oh, after that answer, I'm feeling better, actually. I'm feeling fantastic
Friday night,
too.
it's a weekend.
Friday night. Have you, do you have pets?
Do I have pets?
Yeah.
Or a cat?
You have a cat. Ooh.
God, please, no!
Annemieke is like, I'm out.
No,
Get me
well, I did have some bigger pets, but my my town section doesn't really accommodate.
Yeah.
So.
I have a cat too. Damn. What are we gonna do? I always remember a friend here. No. In New Zealand, he said, you gotta pick a team. You are birds team or you are cats team.
Yeah.
And I think I'm cats team. Sorry. Oops.
Well, do you know, my cat, actually, when we lived on the farm, he got stuck in the chicken house. So he was a little tiny little stray, and someone dumped him, and he got stuck in our chicken house. So it was just fate.
It's just fate.
He just fell on my lap. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Have you ever had a bird as a pet?
I did have a bird, actually. I had a cockatiel when I was, I would have been 13, 14. Very young.
Did you cut their wings?
No.
No.
Well, he was sort of an inside bird. He didn't really go outside. It was cool, though.
Yeah?
He could, do tricks and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Nice,
very
nice,
cool.
nice. So the reason why I'm asking all those questions is because tonight we have the pleasure to talk to Annemieke. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
We're very happy to have you here. Do you like this place?
I love it. I had no idea what I was expecting, so this is really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So, Annemieke, what's the right word? Is it like you manage the Bird Rescue Trust? You work for them? Like what's actually the right word for what you do there?
So we are a rehabilitation clinic or centre, is just whatever you want to call it, and we work with probably up to 7 people on a daily basis, taking in native wild birds, assessing them, looking after them and releasing them again. So I suppose because I live on the property, I'm the main one there and do most of the work, but I definitely need the volunteers to come in and give me a break from time to time, and just to help me, but most of all also I want them to learn so I can have more time off in the future.
Fantastic. So just before you make the promotion to bring more volunteers to the bird rescue, I just want to say thank you to our beautiful sponsors here tonight from Slice Baby Sourdough Pizza, 23 Albert Street. So if you are coming to the Coromandel for the holidays, hit them up. They're always busy. Beautiful family. They make amazing kai. They always shout some pizzas on Friday nights for us, which we're very thanks, Jess.
So good.
Good.
So good, very
good
tasty.
pizza. Hey? Yeah.
Very good.
So make sure to check them out on social media. You can order there. They have the number and they are amazing. Thanks, Mike. So how do we go about finding more volunteers? Like how does it work? Do we apply for it?
So we actually got 7 at the moment that each have a morning, or some of them come 2 mornings a week. And we also have students from Te Raranga School that come and help and learn. They come within school time, allowed to come miss a lesson and come and help. So they get a variety of jobs to do. Obviously, most of the work is scooping, pooping.
Someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. But yeah, I make sure that they do a variety of work and learn. So I help to feed, do food preparations and cleaning, of course, and holding, and just being part of the team. As far as volunteers is concerned, I get asked a lot, and we have got enough, and we probably have a drawer full of applications that either come in through the email. So if we need more people, which we will over summer, I will just contact them and see who lives the closest.
Yeah.
That's the easiest. Yeah.
Is there a time of the year that requires more work?
I was just gonna ask that.
And I'm just gonna put another one there. And what's the reason why there's a busy time in the year?
So it's summer. Summer is a busy time, and the reason for that is that the population of Coromandel increases. Not of the birds, of the people. So we get all holiday makers, and even Kuaotunu and Matarangi. I think they have at least 10,000 people more than in off season. So all of these people are going to walk on the beach. All of these people turn their lights on at night. All of these people are going to drive. So that's when the casualties happen. That's when we have birds being hit by cars, confused with lights at night, and also it collides with our fledgling season. So our fledgling season is starting now. So for different species of birds, it's at different times. So that's when we see, for example, between January and March, we'll see a lot of penguins come in because the public finds them.
Wow.
Penguins. Have you spotted some penguins around, Jess?
I have not seen a penguin, no.
Then you'll have to come and visit.
You just let me know when you've got a penguin and I'll be straight there.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So I hear about tagging like some water animals. Like is it similar with birds?
Tagging is as in
like to again I don't know, like is that a way that you track them, that like you put something to know what they're going, what's happening? Because like I was wondering where the penguins are coming from. Sorry.
So that happens in certain areas. So for example in Mount Manganui they do little blue penguin monitoring, and so the people down there from Western Wildlife's Trust, I think that's the right name, they basically microchip the chicks. So when they come back and the penguins need to be checked, they can scan them and pick up the numbers. Tagging, I think they do it in zoos and other places where penguins are kept in captivity. They'll tag them. Penguins are the only ones that are different because most other birds won't be tagged or microchipped. Kiwi is an exception, of course, they get tracked. And yeah, basically it's nothing to do with me, really. So if I do have a strange bird that comes in, I think that might have a microchip. or it has a tracking device on, then of course we will connect with the right organisation that deals with that.
What would constitute a strange bird?
Well, a bird we don't often see.
Like a
bittern or kiwis not all that strange anymore, but so with, say for example, kiwis and bitterns, which is quite endangered species, they have their own environmental groups that look after them. So Project Kiwi is and there's a bittern conservation group and there's a dotterel conservation group all over the country. So those people do their own monitoring, their own have their own ways of tracking as well. Yeah.
What are the biggest problems in not seeing native birds anymore? Like what I understand the cause. I understand people wanting to preserve them, but like just playing a bit of like devil's advocate there, like what's the imbalance? What are we losing by not having those species around anymore?
It's different per species, of course. So with the little blue penguins, obviously the environmental issues we're having with warmer seas, loss of habitats, dogs on the beach. We're losing quite a lot of those each year. Weather events, and basically little blue penguin parents are not very good parents. So they basically kicked them out of the nest at about 4 months of age.
Oh, wow.
Or they're actually in a burrow. And this little blue penguin sits on the beach and thinks, now what? Wow. So the parents think, I'm hungry, I'm go off fishing, and then they sit there and they have never seen the sea. They have never navigated before. They have never fished before or hunted before, and so they're left to it.
Wow.
So in other species, parents teach their young how to hunt, how to fish, how to basically how to fit in the environment.
Oh.
So these little blue penguins are left on their own. Parents are hungry because they've been trying to feed these penguins and not having much for themselves. The parents also have to go and molt at that time of the year. So they have to fatten up, come back to the burrow and stay until they've finished molting. So these little blues are out there on their own, which means that if there isn't enough fish, then they're not going to make it. And that's the reason why we see so many little blue penguins on the beach, either near death or starving. Yeah.
So would they come this area to find food, or they don't have burrows here, do they?
Yes,
they do. They?
Yes, so Kuaotunu, Matarangi, Otama, Opito, there's burrows everywhere.
Really?
And I couldn't tell you how many and exactly where they were, but there's lots of evidence of penguins' footprints.
Wow.
And so they go out at first light or just before first light. They go out hunting, fishing, stay out at sea all day, and they come back just when it gets dark and hobble along to the burrow where they were hatched from. Sometimes these burrows are under pahutakawa trees on the beach. Sometimes they're over the road, way up a hill. They can be about 2 kilometres inland.
Very clever.
So, yeah, they've got to cover a lot of sea and a lot of land to get back, so they need to have good food to be able to do that, to sustain themselves. And so that's often while they're exhausted sitting on the beach and I just can't do it anymore, or they cross the road and get run over because they're not fast enough. And so we see all of that over summer, and the numbers have increased.
Can you take us through the process from when you get a bird? Like what are you already told us the main causes why people would bring them, like from the moment that you see one to the moment that they die, or like that's what I would believe, they die or they just get released. So like how is that process?
Okay, so that's it's a process of first of all talking to the rescuer when they come in with this animal, and obviously they're very concerned about the state of the bird, And so, we need to take lots of information from them, because we need to also think about, if this animal survive, where are we going to release it? So where was the bird found? Where on the beach was it? Was it in the middle of the beach? Did you take it out of the water? Was it disturbed by a dog? We've got to ask them lots of questions, because basically the animal doesn't talk.
No.
So we've got to look at the signs, just the more information we have, the more we will know what we need to do. Then it is very similar to a dog or a cat, or even a human, that stabilization is the first thing that we need to work at. So we look at the animal's weight, pop them on the scale. That that gives us an indication of if this animal is very underweight, or and that tells us maybe that this animal hasn't eaten for 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. If it's and if we look at the inside of their mouth or their beak, so you can see if an animal's pale, nice and pink. That tells us a lot as well. And check out for injuries. And then, unlike what most people think, the first thing they need is heat. They just need to be warmed up. So a lot of people think, penguins, they need to be in ice. No. Cold water? No. They need to be warmed up, so we need to get their temperatures up. Yeah. So they go into an incubator. We turn the temperature up and just wait for the animal to feel better. After that, we'll just administer fluids. Same with us. So I often compare it with, say, for example, you're driving along the coast road at night in your car, and whoops, you go off the road and you end up in a ditch, and you don't get found until 3 days later. That happens. So it's a similar situation. You finally get found. The ambulance comes, and they're not going to offer you a hamburger and chips.
Glass of water.
They're going to put a drip in you, make sure you're warm, that you're stabilised, and then take you to the hospital. And then if you need pain relief, you'll get pain relief. It's exactly the same story. So we warm them up. Fluid therapy is the number one treatment. And if they're injured, they'll get pain relief as well. And then just monitor hour by hour.
And then how long will they, do you wait until they're sort of better and then you release them, or what's the
time period? It just depends on the state they are. So I would say if I'm lucky, I might release 1 in 10 penguins that comes in.
Oh, wow.
So if they come in pale, looking like white as a sheet, as you could call it, underweight, under 500 gram, they are most certainly not going to make the night.
Oh.
So we just make them comfortable, leave them in the warm incubator. If they're nice and pink and they're standing up and they want to bite us, but they're very underweight, I know they've got a chance. So we carry on with the fluid therapy, and then offer them, say, for a little bit of fish broth that we bake up, electrolytes, and then they get smoothies, nice smelly fishy smoothies. The volunteers love doing that work. And it might not be until day 4 or 5 until they get real fish. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it's the process of just feeding up until they're the right weight, and then releasing them where we can.
Is that because you're a trust, and I guess there's a lot of birds coming in, is there a time limit that you give yourselves? Like, we have to try our best in, I don't know, 1 week, a month, 2 months, and if it doesn't work, then something has to be done, or not? Each case is a case. Each case
is a case. So we have a fair good idea of what comes in and how it comes in, whether this animal has a chance or not. By the rules of the Department of Conservation that I hold a license for are not allowed to keep any animals after 3 months. So that's the limit. There are exceptions, of course. It doesn't happen very often. We have birds in for that period of time at all.
Would that be if they were like really ill, or?
Would probably be if I could, give you an example, like a kiraroo with significant fractures.
Right.
Then that kiraroo would stay in rehabilitation a lot longer than 3 months sometimes, not always. Or if they have multiple injuries but they are survivable, then we'll just go over that time and it's not a problem. Most of the animals are with us up to 2 weeks, I suppose. Penguins a lot longer as well. We can have a hawk that's been hit by a car and happens to have lead poisoning as well. They need long treatments before they can fly again. So every case is different. Yeah.
What about diversity in New Zealand? How well are we served with different species and different birds in this country?
Well, the New Zealand has is the biggest seabird capital of the world. So we have the most different seabird species in the world. Oh. So that's something to be proud of. However, they are declining year by year. So there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of monitoring going on to stop that. But as far as New Zealand's birds is concerned, we don't have as many as Australia, for example. The amount of birds that are there, and they're just so many more species than we have. So yeah, is that what you were asking? Or?
Yeah. Is there a reason why New Zealand is so good and prolific? And do you know?
Why are you here? Why did you move here? Well, maybe that's why they want to be here.
Right? It makes sense. It is
a beautiful place.
Absolutely.
A difficult question.
Yeah. I just because it takes me to the predators issue. That's kind of what I was
segueing into.
Like what are the biggest threats? Is that us, humans, or actually?
We are predators just as much. Yeah. So there's a lot done, especially in the Coromandel. Just to trap and there's most of them are probably the stoats that are doing the damage, but then we have the possums that eat the young as well, cats, dogs, and us. Yeah, so there's always work to be done to stop that. There's always predator control necessary everywhere, and whether it's setting traps or whether it's keeping your cat inside at night.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Controlling your dog on the beach. But yeah, as I said, we are also predators. So the birds that are coming in our clinic are scared of us. So it's often questioned, people ask that they might, after a while get used to you. They might thank you for being looked after. No.
No.
Not at all.
I suppose you'd want to avoid them being used to you, wouldn't you? Because you wouldn't want them to be too friendly with people, I suppose, because they'll just get run over or
So that's called imprinting. So that's one thing we're trying to not to do, of course. So we cover all the cages up. We have signs everywhere in the clinic. Do not talk to the birds. Do not say good morning, darling, to any of the birds.
I would be rubbish at that job.
It's really hard not to. And there are species, of course, like the baby birds and the ducklings that instantly think that you're a mum. So you've got to just take your distance. But as far as predators is concerned, when we have a patient in a cage and you try and get close to the cage and open the door, they move away in the furthest corner. And really, they think it's their last day because this is this big predator coming to get me. There's lots of ways to make it easier for them, and hide your face and cover the cage up and not talking, and make the procedure or whatever you need to do with them pretty quick, and then close the door and get out of the room. Yeah.
Was there a case of a rare bird or something that happened that was a bit of an exception, but the team was like, this doesn't happen every day?
Probably lots. We have some really nice stories, and I often get asked, "Do you want to write a book?" But where's the time for that? Rare cases. We've had some rare birds, but we also have common birds with rare stories. And one of them was probably quite a number of years ago, where we received a kereroo baby, like a wood pigeon baby, and that needed to be reared. Kereroo parents make really horrible flimsy nests, so these fall out of the nest when there's a bit of wind. This baby was picked up and taken to us, and it was hourly feeding, poop scooping, keeping it warm. It grew up into a full-grown kereroo, but it didn't want to eat unless I was there. Oh. So we would offer it food, see the plate, and think, nah, just wait for Annemieke, So I had food on my hand, it would eat from my hand, and I thought, this is not going right. Anyway, it had a couple of other issues as well, as it was flying around in the aviary, but it would only eat if I came in the aviary with it. And I decided to contact some of the other rehabilitators and see if they shed any light on what I could do to change this behaviour. And so one of them said, it needs a mate. You need to bring it to another rehabilitation centre where there's other kereroo, so it can learn to be a kereroo. So that's what we did. And we popped it on the ferry to Waiheke, and had asked permission from Doc because it gets off the mainland, so he got paperwork to fill out. Then asked the ferryman if he would be so nice to do it for free. And it was picked up by one of the staff from the Waiheke Native Bird Rescue, and they took it on, and little miss didn't want to know anyone.
Oh, no.
Still didn't want to eat, and didn't really wanted to be with the other kereroo. So we learned a lot from that. And in the end, we called him Kenny because we thought it was a boy. Anyway, in the end, they sent him to Auckland Zoo just to be checked out. And Auckland Zoo thought, this is amazing. This is a wild kereroo that is so friendly. So he became an advocate bird. Wow. Meaning that he is open to the public. He's in an aviary where they do demonstrations, and so Kenny will come and sit on your shoulder when he's called and all that kind of stuff. So that was a nice outcome, but it should not be repeated. Wow. And in the end, they did some tests, and it found out that Kenny wasn't Kenny. It was Miss Kenny. Yeah. So... but yeah, there's loads of stories like that. Yeah,
it's cool that you mentioned a zoo, because I wanted to take the conversation there at some stage, so it feels appropriate. What do you think about zoos?
How they are now, I'm pretty happy with what they do at the zoo. They are hugely into conservation, making sure the animals are well looked after. I have a fair amount of connections with Auckland Zoo. Either through the staff that works there or through lectures and conferences that we go to. their work is amazing. Their animals are well cared for, and the environment is beautiful. So obviously I prefer animals to be wild, but there's a need for learning and to have animals up close, not just for people that visit, but also for the staff to learn from, take samples from, breed from, and preserving the species. I'm all for that. Yeah, for sure. There's a need for it.
Yeah, I understand the part to breed. Like I understand that some animals need a safer space so that the species can carry on. But I think we're so used to seeing, especially those water. I keep bringing that back because it's the image that we usually think of, like a swimming pool with a dolphin, being used as a. Yeah. So I guess for birds and for other animals, it's a little bit different. But that's what concerns me, like when one group of people doing a good job kind of opens doors for people to do the entertainment with animals, that I think we're going to look back in the future and feel so ashamed about what we're doing.
Well, if you look at how the zoo was in the 50s and 60s when they did tea parties with the chimpanzees at the time, those sort of things don't happen anymore. So the zoo is there for the animal, not necessarily for the public. And I think that if they know that an animal's in stress, something will get done about it. So they for example, don't have bears in zoos anymore because they get too distressed. They have a limited space for elephants, and I'm not an expert in this, but I think if an animal is not in its right environment, with the right care and the right space, or has stress in any way, they will change things and see to it. Yeah, and so I definitely am not keen on dolphins and whales being in captivity, and there's enough evidence that we passed that. Yeah, okay. For sure.
How do they, like birds in zoos, do they mostly come from, say, places like yours? Or?
Yes.
Yeah,
so the native birds they have at the zoo, and they're usually there because they have come from a rehabilitation centre that has a particular bird that cannot be released in the wild. So we have sent birds to Auckland Zoo, also Antarctic Centre in Christchurch. We've sent a penguin on a plane once.
Wow.
We won't do that again because that was a big dent in our bank account to do that. But anyway, it was a great experience, and also knowing that this penguin who's blind in one eye could still live happily there. So there's lots of places where they can go to, sanctuaries. There's one in Coromandel. There's a sanctuary opened by Barry Brickell a long time ago, which is all enclosed. So if I have a bird that I'm a little bit doubtful about whether he'll make it, it has to be a native, of course, and there's an option for me to send it there too. Yeah, sure.
Recently we had the story about the whale that got beached close to us here in Whitianga, and there was a lot of people speaking from like completely ignorance and making assumptions. But I think what stood out for me about that whole thing was the importance of the iwi doing their part, coming and communicating with Doc. Is there a relationship there between the work that you do and the iwis and all the Maori knowledge and the way that they see birds? Like, did you, because I don't know if we mentioned that in the show, but you were born in Holland, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So just so we can touch a little bit on that, like how's been your journey? Like, are you keen to always learn and bring more of the culture? So how is that relationship with the iwis?
So there's quite a bit there. So obviously there are decisions to be made sometimes, and because we are dog licensed, those decisions will have to go past dog, and not very often but we try and stay within the rules of what to do. Often iwi gets consulted by doc if we have a special bird that we need to keep longer or transfer somewhere. So doc handles all of that for me. So I usually contact one of the rangers. So we have a special bird in, like, for example, a bittern, because there's only about 900 in the country left. Wow. So if this bird's ready for a release, then I usually just try and contact doc and say, hey, what's the best area for this bird to go to? I have some suggestions, of course, so I'd love to go to Otama, where there's beautiful wetlands, but iwi often gets consulted about these things as well. So also with dead animals, so if anything is run over and it's found dead, doc would often want to have the body to pass on to iwi, because then the species can be used for either cloak making, and they have their contacts in environmental Maori groups that collecting certain feathers or even bones. So yeah, that's probably the only connection that I have with iwi. Yeah, not directly, but usually channeled through doc. Yeah.
As a vet, as someone who does the job for years, is it just like a normal part of the process for you, or it was like sort of an adaptation to what you were used to doing, and then you were like, okay, we have ways of doing things here, and that's what we do? Or like, did you question things? Were you like paying attention to the dynamics? Or because I guess they're different in different countries, like people deal with culture in different ways.
Yeah, so yeah, the connection with doc and iwi I didn't have in Holland, and it's also been a long time ago since I was working as a vet nurse in Holland as well. So I started as a 19-year-old at a really big vet clinic, and basically we didn't see many birds. We did have a zoo vet working for us, so we did some, crazy things with some unusual animals from time to time, but there wasn't a culture as such where you had to consult people. And I was probably too young at the time to realise what was involved in those things. And also, it's a long time ago, I can't remember very much of it. But, New Zealand's different for sure. And so by the time I came to New Zealand, I was actually introduced to birds, which wasn't part of my work in Holland at all. So, whole different scenario. So it's a whole different study as well, and learning the species and all the Maori names, because when people ring up to say I've found korora, what's it look like? And then slowly, you learn.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How did this start? Like, how did you start this whole thing?
Oh, okay. Wow.
Great
It seems to be such a it's a great thing that you have going on. I'd love to know how it started.
So I came to New Zealand, and I worked as a vet nurse in Auckland. And so the guy that owned the clinic was specialised in birds. And of course we saw everything else as well, so we probably had at least one day where injured wildlife was brought in by a local rescue centre, and we did nothing else than opening box, see what was necessary to do, x-ray, stitch up, whatever. Then this bird went back to the rehabilitation centre, and we never heard anything of it anymore. So that was then one day a week working with birds. And I didn't like it. It was just claws, feathers, and you can't cuddle them. There's just nothing to it. So that was my introduction to wildlife, to wild birds and pet birds as well. And I worked for him for 12 years, and then we moved to Coromandel and worked on the section to build a house, and kids came along. I wanted to be at home mum, be involved in the school, in the community, build a garden, help build a house, and the whole lot, and never thought about work anymore until one day somebody turned up with a duckling, and I heard you were a vet nurse. What do I do with this? I said, a duck. Ooh.
Can't cuddle it.
Anyway, build a cage and this and that, make a pool, and the kids were all involved, and that was the first start of bird rescue. And so more and more people knew about it. They brought more birds, and from having a few cages in a laundry, we now have a full-blown clinic with 3 rooms and 7 volunteers. So many years later, that's how it started. One duckling. Yep.
To spark the fire.
And of course, I was now all of a sudden on the other end of rehabilitation that I didn't really know an awful lot about, because I was more knowledgeable about the vet nursing part of it. And so you take an injured bird from the vet home, and you need to know what kind of cage does it need to be on, what does it need to sit on, what does it eat, how do I give it medication, will it bite me, what colour poop should it have, and all of those kind of things. Things it takes a long time to learn.
But you've got all sorts of knowledge up there.
We're still learning. 17 years later, we're still learning every day.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that's how it started. Yeah.
So when I think I always think about the flock, like the going together to places, and it looks like that gang, like they're doing their thing, they know what they're doing, they look determined, like we're going, and we even make these beautiful things together because we know what we're doing. And then one miss out, gets hurt or whatever, and then the team looks after that bird. Is it a challenging part of the process, like just to catch up, to find their group again? Like, is that one of the reasons why a lot of them just don't make it, because they lost that flock?
That's a very good question, actually, because it's not just looking after a bird and sending it on its way again. We also need to know a lot about the bird. So what's the behaviour? What stage of life is it in? What's its habitat? Where are the rest of them? Exactly. Is this a migrating bird, or is this a bird that stays here always, like Kirraloo, for example? So all of these things have an influence on how you rehabilitate this bird, or whether it can be rehabilitated. For example, so think about a species we've had, long-tailed cuckoo, for example. We don't see them very often. They migrate. A lot of birds, actually, from New Zealand migrate to Australia at some stage. The gannet is another one. So if you find a gannet that's missed the boat, basically, then do you rehabilitate that bird? How long does it take? Will he catch up? Will he make it overseas? So all of these things a factor in what you do and the decisions you make. If the rest of them have all gone and he's the only one left, there's just no point. So, and you have to take into account what kind of injuries does he have. Is he compromised with parasites, for example, because he's been on land too long? All of these factors you have to take into account to make a decision in the end, whether it's going to make it or whether it needs to be euthanized.
Have you been attacked by one? Like a crazy story that you just freaked you out?
I just imagine birds flapping around
the movie,
clinic.
right? Birds, the movie, the Hitchcock. Is that Hitchcock?
I've never watched it.
Oh, don't! Please don't.
Well, put me off for life.
It's gonna be the end of the trust. Don't.
Yeah, I mean, we do get scratched and bitten, of course, from time to time. There was one veterinarian I used to work with in Holland, and he used to say, if you get bitten, it's your own bloody fault, because you should know how to avoid it.
Wow.
And so that basically comes down to technique, and we need to avoid being bitten, scratched.
Hoping that a lion doesn't come up, right?
So,
oops. Sorry, guys. Friday mood.
Further mood, too much pizza.
So Leo was talking about, what were we talking about, mowers before?
About
mowers.
Yeah.
I'm glad we don't have mowers anymore. My clinic would be too small.
I was going to say, imagine if there was. They would bring them straight to you in a horse float.
On top of one, I would bring a mower. Got a ride on a mower here. It's not looking good.
Yeah, just imagine that. Hey. Yeah.
So what were like the biggest birds that we had in Aotearoa? Like what was the species that we had before that we don't have anymore that were like quite amazing?
That you would have loved to have seen.
There you go. Boom.
Haast eagle.
How big is their wingspan? Meters.
I don't know by heart. No.
It's quite big though, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. I think the biggest bird we've ever had was a wandering albatross, which came from the Arctic islands. 3.10 meters wingspan. Would only just fit on this table, minus the pizza.
Wow!
And that was definitely a bird that needed quite a lot of handlers before I could figure out what was going on. Yeah, but that was the biggest bird we've ever had. But yeah, there's lots of albatross species. That are the biggest species in New Zealand. I would say those are the. There's no land species that are bigger than the albatross species that we have, and we're fortunate to have. And being able to see them quite close to the coast as well. You have to go out fishing, of course, to see them. But those are but yeah, there's lots of species that have disappeared over the years, but I couldn't just give you names like that.
A bit of a controversial question, but we talk about pets, right? Because it's such a common thing, humans owning animals, having animals, and dealing with animals as as commodities in a way, on a personal level. How much of that makes sense to you for the perspective of the person who just said, like, well, we're treating these animals, we're trying not to make a personal relationship there because I want to see this animal thriving in nature, and then we have this thing that we own animals. It's a weird, for me, it's a weird thing. It's always been, I have pets, like I in my whole life in Brazil, my mom would rescue animals because we have stray dogs and stray cats. So there were times that we had, I think the max was like 9, like 5 dogs, 4 cats, because they would just find like, oh, that one doesn't have a leg, oh, that one was run over, like in my mom and my sister, they would cry and bring animals. So like some of them would stay, some of them would not, looking for someone to look after. Like there's not a system like in New Zealand where you get the chip and you look after the animal, like people, they're just everywhere. That's why I use the word gangs, because we actually say that the dogs, the stray dogs in Brazil, like they're like gangs, like they walk all confident, like they know what they're doing. So it never made much sense for me, this thing with like owning animals, but at the same time they are part of our society. I think if society evolved the way that it did, it's because we learned how to tame them. So there's a lot of great points on that, but I'm just curious on this perspective of someone who is looking after them, obviously creating a connection, but like so happy to see them going.
That's the aim of the game. So, and as I told you before, that we go with the 3 R's, which is rescue, rehabilitation, and release. So we have to achieve all 3 of those. And it's an absolute no-no to connect with an animal. And we've learned from it, from Kenny, or Miss Kenny. We've learned from it from some of the ducklings that flew back with us as fast as they could. We've had... and what we learn from that is to even detach even more while we're handling birds. For example, if we have pukeko babies, then we try and have either a glove on that simulates the colour of the mum. We give them a mirror in the cage so they can see what they look like, so that if they grow up they don't actually bond with the wrong species. We have to make sure this animal's going to survive in the wild. That's the ultimate. And I love pets. And I tried to have a pet bird at some stage, and it didn't work out. It was just another mouth to feed, as well as, and I know my husband's listening, but he didn't like my husband, and so a decision was to be made to pass him on, and it was a good decision because he wasn't happy on his own anyway. But we have always had dogs. And I think pets are hugely important for families and to make the connections with them, but they have to be pets and not wild. So there are some animal parks that have wild birds on display because they cannot be returned to the wild, and it's good for the public to see them up close. I kind of still think it's a little bit sad for them that they're not in their own environment. They're not hunting for their own food. They get their food on a plate every night, and it's not right because they need to be out there doing their thing. Yeah.
What I like about biology is that it tries to understand the animals from their perspective. You know, like I love those stories of like, dolphins have very different brains. You know, like they're bigger, and maybe they have senses that we cannot even grasp because we don't have that. So what can you give us like about birds? What are things with like, do they have pretty sharp like smells like dogs? They can hear frequencies that we don't, and like what's the thing with birds that fascinates you? Is it like their size? Well,
it's their eyesight, I would say.
Yeah.
So amazing eyesight, and 10 times better than, 100 times better than us. Oh. Just imagine, a hawk circling over a forest that can see a rabbit or a rat running away and dive deep between the trees and the shrubs and get it. Same as name a water bird. So gannet, for example, from a great height, they can see fish underwater. There's lots of examples like that. Great eyesight, sense. Some birds have long nostrils, like the kiwis, for example. They have long sensory nostrils, so they can feel things, and they don't have very good eyesight. Actually, there's here I have to try and think of different species. Birds can't actually smell very well.
Okay,
and some birds can't smell at all.
Oh.
So as far as that's concerned, probably the only bird that I can think of that smells really well is the kiwi, because he's got the nostrils at the end of its beak, and he pokes down in the earth and smells the worms and feels for the vibrations. Wow. The other bigger seabirds that can smell really well are the petrel species that have huge tube nostrils on top of their beak, so they can smell dead animals and carcasses and fish from a long that's gone off from a long height and distance. So
would they only eat fresh, like dead, or they would eat meat that has been sitting there for?
Yeah, so we're talking about the bigger petrel species. So the giant northern giant petrel that we see often in this area. They're scavengers, and they will clean up what has died on the beach or on the rocks or is floating in the water. So they're good cleaner-uppers. They're often called smelly Nellies because they smell. They have very good sense of smell and eyesight. So it's per species is different. So your common garden bird couldn't smell a thing. So if you find a baby bird and put it back in the nest, people often think, oh, the parents will reject it because I've touched it, and it's...
Is that not true?
Not true.
Wow.
They can't smell. No.
They can't smell.
No.
Well, I saw a picture not that long ago of like this, I think I don't remember which animal, but like there was this tiny, kind of like a rat, but it was not a rat, like on top of the bird, kind of like partnering, you know, like probably they were on a mission, like, and yeah, I don't know. Is it something common to see, like in New Zealand or in the wilds, or like from what you studied of animals with birds, like kind of collaborating to catch something, or like to try to get something out of a tree or some stuff, because we all know that these things happen in nature, right? It makes sense, but like some curious facts in New Zealand.
So are you talking about predators or?
Oh, I think that one was actually on like the bird was very aware that there was someone on top of it, you know, like, and it didn't bother, you know, like it seemed to be fine with having someone
like crossbreeding or something.
No, just like kind of to take advantage of a trip.
It's like birds sitting on cows. Or
yeah, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, like an animal being on top of another one just because maybe there are some bugs there that they can eat from, or just they kind of like, oh, they're flying anyway, so let me grab here and just go.
I'm not sure if I've seen that in birds, but I mean, there's some crazy things happening out there, of course, and everything. I always say, you know, everything has to eat. So if there's a bigger bird taking a younger bird, well, that happens in nature. But I've not seen, you know, that what you mentioned about birds sitting on large animals in Africa. They're basically sitting there
and they just eat things, eh?
They just get rid of the parasites, which is, you know, they're co-hosting kind of thing. They're helping each other, or catching a ride with an elephant.
Right. Is cannibalism common among birds, of them eating like their babies or something? Is there a reason why would that happen, or does it happen?
No, I don't. Cannibalism doesn't happen, but birds, mother and parent birds do some funny things over. Sometimes there's the story of, for example, the herons that have their nests really, really high up in the trees, so they have 3 or 4 eggs, and if they have 4 eggs and they're all hatched, these heron babies get huge, and there's no room for all of them. So the one that's the weakest, out you go, and they often get found on the ground. They've fallen from a great height, and if they have survived it, they often come to us, and we know that's the story. And then we have to make a decision: are we going to interfere with nature because the parents were going to kick it out because they're looking after the most surviving ones? That's nature. Or has it fallen out for another reason, or have the brothers and sisters have kicked it out? So that happens in other species as well. But that's it happens. Yeah, it happens with other species where the nest is basically too small for all of these, and the parents then either kill them or just kick them out and look after the babies that are tougher and going to survive out there. Yeah,
I remember watching a little documentary once about some kind of bird, and it goes to a nest of another bird which has quite small eggs, and it knocks them all out, and it lays its own one in there, and the nest is maybe this big, and the baby of that bird is huge. Yeah, so it just lays this egg in another nest, so the other mum will feed it and look after it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, and that happens to the shiny cuckoo.
I think that's the one. Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of. It's quite big, the baby, isn't it? And it fills up the whole nest.
Yeah. So basically, you got a species called the grey warbler. They're tiny birds. They make a really unusual shaped nest that is like a pearl, you know, like an oval nest. And so the eggs are in the bottom of the nest, and the parents are entering from the top. There's a little hole, And here comes this shiny cuckoo thinks, yay, the nest is already built. I'm going to put my egg in there, which is much bigger. And the shiny, so they lay the eggs in there and they just take off. And so the grey warbler, I don't know, it's never been proven if they actually know there is an extra larger egg in there, but they hatch them all. And so eventually this shiny cuckoo gets born into a grey warbler's nest and takes over.
So do the other ones hatch, or do they just stay?
It depends, yeah. Sometimes the nest gets that heavy that it falls apart and the little ones fall out. We've had people bringing a whole grey warbler's nest to us with a shiny cuckoo in it.
Wow.
So it's, there's lots of studies been done, but we don't actually know why that happens. Yeah, is it laziness?
Maybe.
Is it just
Let's get someone else to do it.
But it's a great story. Yeah, it's a great story. So yeah, strange things happen in the wild.
Strange things happen in nature. Eh? Wow,
and that's why we're learning so much every day, and we have to know, what goes on in this bird's life, and where does it belong, and how does it breed, and what does it eat, and where do I release it again, and is it in the right time or is it in the wrong time of the year?
Is it easy to maintain a trust like the one that you do? Like, is New Zealand? Is it easy? Is there do you have to go through a lot of processes that are fundings involved? So how does it work?
We only became a trust a number of years ago, and the reason for that was that we wanted to be an entity so that we could apply for grants. And as this is a growing organisation, there's funds needed the whole time. And if you're a legal entity, it just gives you more opportunities and more chances to tap into things like pub charities or community grants and things like that. And so a trust is it was an eye opener to set it up, and obviously we needed some help with that. A lot of paperwork, a lot of waiting time, a lot of questions. So there's accountants involved and lawyers involved, and there's just all sorts of things involved. But once it's running, but yeah, you've got to keep at it. There's books to keep. What comes in needs to be recorded. What goes out needs to be recorded. Reports to be written every year for charity services. It's a bit
Lots of stuff to do. Wow.
Is there any part of the government that supports trusts like yours, or it's all you have to do your thing? Like, there's no Ministry of, I don't know, something like environment?
Well, there is Department of Conservation, of course.
Yes.
As far as as long as we've existed, they have not financially supported us. It's been talked about, but it hasn't happened. So we need to do all our fundraising ourselves, and our community is fantastic. But we need to be at it all the time. Think of something new. And because money doesn't grow on trees, and running a trust costs a lot of money, and it's not just bird food, which is something people often think, like, what do you need? So I'll give you some wild bird seeds. No, we actually never use that stuff. So, but we need to pay for petrol, we need to pay for the phone, we need to pay for electricity, we need to pay for rubbish collection, we need rubbish bags, we need a freezer full of fish. It's the running cost of a trust. Doesn't necessarily go directly to the birds. It's the building, it's all the things I just mentioned. Yeah. Accountants need to be paid. We have a website that costs money. We have a database that costs money. Then we have ongoing learning that costs money. So just like nurses go and do additional studies or upgrade, or have seminars or have conferences. They cost money. We need to travel somewhere. We need to find accommodation. The conferences cost money. We take volunteers along, cost more money. Petrol along the way, diesel, whatever. And we need to do these things because we need to keep learning. And we try and be involved in education as much as we can, and also cost money. So a trust helps, being a trust, but you still got to do the hard work and be creative and ask, which is something I really find hard to do. So we've changed a lot of things, learning from other rehabilitation centres, because we meet up every year with a conference, and so we're all part of Wildlife Rehabilitation Network of New Zealand, and there's a lot of us that get together and do online learning, Zoom meetings, and we learn from each other, and fundraising is a point, it is a key point we often talk about. How do we get more money? How do we get more funds? Who can support us? And finding ways of new ideas and collecting the funds. Yeah, so so a couple of years ago we decided to, because people, when they bring a bird in, they need to leave a little information on a form, so that we can later, when they've gone and we treated the bird, we enter that information on our database. On the bottom of the form, it will ask if you could leave a donation, as we are a voluntary organisation. And so we found that really helps. And so probably 1 in 10 people would then go home that night and think, right, I'm going to put $10 on, or $15, or a monthly one, a yearly one, or just a one-off donation. So that has helped enormously. Still not enough. So I think currently, I counted that, worked out, we're running between 12,000 and 13,000 a year of cost, normal running costs, and that's not to pay for equipment or repairs. So it's just running cost. So we need to work hard on that the whole time, and we've got some regular things in place that really help.
If the entire community of Whiringa donated $1 three times a year, $1 3 times a year, there you go. Yeah,
you get a budget. Come on, Whiringa.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to actually say thank you to some of the supporters, right?
Yeah. So obviously we have a handful of people that make a monthly donation to us, and some are far and some are very close, and some of them are very small amounts, some are very big amounts, and without these people we couldn't exist. So they know who they are, and I hugely appreciate their contribution. Apart from that, a number of years ago, a guy in Kuaotunu started making jams and chutneys. And he said, I don't know if we can sell those for you. And so okay. So we started selling jams and chutneys from the house. And I gave him a bit of money for the ingredients and asked the community for the produce. We got too many zucchinis, give them to John, the jam man. And it started rolling, and he's into it, man. He's just into it, and he's looking up recipes from his youth. And so recently those jams and chutneys are now all going to the social services op shop in Coghill Street. And they're selling them for us, which is a lot better, because it means
it's in town.
It's in town. It's less traffic at my house, and they're really making a point of offering everyone. Awesome. Would you like a jam while you're here? Nice. Would you like a chutney or a relish or a tomato or whatever they have on the counter? So that made a big difference. So the manager, Wendy, is extremely supportive, and I've recently come out to have a look at the premises, and we're pretty impressed. And they have a donation box for us as well. They're running a raffle next week for us. So there's lots of people like that I couldn't do without. But John the Jam Man, he has to be mentioned. And of course, Wendy and all her wonderful staff, they're supporting us. That's a regular income we could not do without. So we'd be in trouble if that was the case. Yeah, for sure.
So they're definitely Birds team, the op shop.
Team Bird.
They're definitely Birds.
Yeah.
So for the beautiful people coming to Whitianga, because one of the highlights, it's our op shops, right, Jess? So if you're going to the one in Cog Hill Street, the social service, make sure to get your t-shirts and also some jam, right?
Yeah.
They're not selling the fish smoothie yet.
No, could be.
They haven't bottled those ones yet.
Yeah. No. You'd have to have double gloves on.
Here we
And
go.
a mask.
Recipe before we finish and then make the last one. It's gonna be the fish smoothie recipe. Here we go.
What goes in the fish smoothie? Okay, so electrolytes, mackerel, sardines, anchovies. A little bit of cat food, some seabirds vitamins, some broth. Have I forgotten anything? Some calcium. It stinks.
Yeah, sounds like it would stink.
So it goes through the burley maker.
Oh, yeah.
And
that
then the stuff that comes out of there goes into the NutriBullet. And then what comes out of there, even more smellier, goes in through the sieve, and then you sift it, and it has to be pure liquid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nutritious.
And the rest goes in the compost.
Should have brought some for Leo. Try.
Some birds are eating better than me, Jess. That goes without. Not tonight, because we have slice, baby. We're fancy tonight.
Yes.
Cool. Thanks for sharing the recipe.
Yeah,
it's gonna be in our new magazine. We're gonna
Good
put
luck.
it there. Annemieke, thank you so much.
No problem.
What a pleasure. Thank
No
you.
problem.
So for the
Pleasure.
people keen to support Kuaotunu Bird Rescue Trust, look at this cool folder made by Salty Peepees, right?
Salty peepees.
Shout out to Debbie.
Yes.
Look at this.
Yes. So pick one up from the op shop as well. There's a QR code on the back, makes it easier to donate.
Straight to the website.
Yeah, straight to the website. So help us along. We help the birds.
I didn't know that you had some stuff in the op shop. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yes,
I definitely will.
for sure. Yeah, they're a wonderful team.
I frequent the op shop, so I'll definitely be there.
Good place to go.
That's us. Thank you so much.
No, it was my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us, Jess.
Anytime.
Thank you, Jess.
All right. And for you watching us, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, and I will see you on Monday. Peace. Kakite. Bye.